Drew here, and right off the bat, I just want to say that I understand it's really hard to end a series in a way that makes people happy. That said, I don't know how the finale of Servant was supposed to make anyone happy. To me, the big failing of the show was that it failed to commit to a lane with the portrayal of Leanne. Now, I get that this show has always been about ambiguity, not really knowing how to view things, and I've always enjoyed that aspect of this show. But to me, the ambiguity in this finale was not the result of intentionality on the part of the showrunners and the directors. To me, it felt like a lack of willingness to commit to a portrayal, a lack of intentionality, sloppiness, if you will. To me, they needed to go down one of two paths. They either needed to have the Turners decide that Leanne was evil and reject the Faustian bargain that she was offering them, regardless of the fact that they were going to lose Jericho. That would have been one acceptable way to end this show. Or they needed to commit to her not being evil, and in which case the Turners needed to help her to fight off the malign influence of the cult. I agree with someone online who said that the cult ultimately being right is like the worst take of the century. It just doesn't work because the whole series we've been watching them be this oppressive influence that's coming after Leanne and threatening the Turner household. And the fourth season basically made them look impotent, which was a bad way to go because it took all sense of fear out of the story, all sense of horror out of it once you realize that the cult really can't do anything, that even with Leanne tied up and at their mercy, they either can't or won't try to end her. But also that ultimately, that even though that they're this oppressive cult that tells its members exactly what they have to do, that they're right, because if Leanne doesn't kill herself, if she doesn't accept their authority over her, then the whole world would have ended, or the entire cult would have had to go back to the afterlife. That's just not acceptable storytelling, in my opinion. You can't portray the cult the way this series has portrayed the cult and then expect viewers to be satisfied when they're proved to be ultimately correct. That just doesn't work. And again, like the problem with the portrayal of Leanne is if she's good, then there's no reason for the Turners not to get Jericho back, except, writerly constraints. And if she's bad, then, fine, that works. But that's the reason that they shouldn't get Jericho back, because they can't pay the cost. There's no way to get a dead child back without the cost being too great. Either way, that would have been fine, but this middle ground to me just didn't work. I also felt, my wife described it as whiplash, and I totally agree with her with the characters and how quickly they changed emotionally towards each other. It happened with Leanne, how she, throughout the season, would just jump back and forth with how she was interacting with each of the Turners. Ultimately they were trying to kill her, and her responses kind of made sense because they were born out of, well, they just did this, so I'm going to do this. Dorothy was another matter. I really felt frustrated with this ending because, again, basically the way it wrapped up, at any point in the story, if Sean and Julian had just told her that Jericho was dead, she would have had this moment of realization and the story could have ended. So basically, the first episode of this season could have been the last episode of this season if Julian and Sean had just told Dorothy what was going on. But to have her do this about face and suddenly just accept that Leanne had a good heart and be so grateful for what Leanne had done for her, it came on too quickly. And while I get how a parent would feel grateful for having more time with their child, the about face, it happened too quickly, and I felt like it really, really needed more development. And again, the way that the character of Leanne ended It just, like, this could have been a really emotionally compelling ending, but it didn't feel inevitable. It didn't feel like it had to happen this way. It didn't feel like she had to die, and it definitely didn't feel as tragic as it could have if her death had felt inevitable. The whole series, she's basically known what she knew this episode, and the only thing that was different was that Dorothy finally treated her with love, which you would think would have made her not want to die. But instead she decides, oh, now I want to kill myself because I actually have Dorothy's love and acceptance. Doesn't work for me. Like, she knew the whole time the danger that she was putting the Turners and the world in. So why would Dorothy loving her change that? It also felt really odd to me that she ended with a FaceTime call to Toby. Like, if you're killing yourself, why put him through the emotional torment of feeling like he has a shot with you? That really didn't make sense to me, unless they're implying that, no, actually she's going to go out with him, because they never did find her body. So again, that's the kind of ambiguity I'm okay with in Servant. Like, is she dead? Is she not dead? That's fine. You can choose to view that either way, and that makes sense, because this show has always been about ambiguity. But it needs to be ambiguity that makes the story more intriguing, not ambiguity that just leaves the audience confused about what they're supposed to feel. Lastly, the tease of Julian, the fact that he, has been brought back to life by the cult, so now he is viewed by them as owing his existence to them. This just didn't really add a lot, in my opinion. It felt like, to me, they wanted to have like some kind of last second stinger so that the ending didn't feel too complete, because I don't think they're going to do a spinoff with Julian and the cult. But it didn't really work for me, because that's what it felt like. It felt like a teaser for a spinoff that will never exist. And again, like, it's so unclear what this would actually mean for Julian. Like, what are they going to actually ask from him? How is this actually going to change his life? It left more questions, but not like intriguing questions, just like confusing questions again. So for the most part, I enjoyed this season. It didn't really feel like the conclusion that it could have been. I feel like they could have taken their time with certain aspects, but also like eliminated a lot of episodes where it didn't really add anything to the story, because a lot of these episodes just felt like they were retreading ground from season 3, and then a lot of other story beats felt rushed at the end. I feel like they should have just taken their time with some of these story beats to make them feel earned, and maybe not retread so much ground when there was no stakes. Like, the battle between Leanne and the cult was utterly without teeth this season, because it didn't feel like the cult had any potential to actually defeat her, and they just ended up feeling weak and impotent, so it didn't really matter anything that they did, and anything that happened between Leanne and them just felt like a retread of season 3. So I would have liked to see them spend more time making the stuff between Leanne and the Turners feel earned. And maybe just kind of giving it a little bit more of a concrete interpretation. Like, I'm not saying that they had to tell us what to think, but at least make it clear like what the options are, like the ways that the audience can interpret the story. To me, it felt like they didn't really do the work there either. So those are just my thoughts and opinions for what they are worth. If you enjoyed my review of Servant, I'm sorry I didn't do episodic reviews. This is just the new reality of my life. But I really enjoy hearing your thoughts, so let me know what you thought in the comments. If you're interested in seeing reviews of other shows, please consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, thanks for watching.